Hey guys, Stormmaker here, and today I have a wonderful Fire King deck profile. This is a budget profile. You can actually make the main deck with only 3 starter deck of the Fire Kings, and the extra deck is basically irrelevant except for cards that you can get from the structure deck. So for 30 bucks, you can also go 5-0 at locals like I did today. For a quick reference, I beat Tearlaments, Sky Striker, Vanquish Soul, Unchained, and Tearlaments again. With that done, let's get into the deck profile. This is a pure Fire King structure deck, a 40 card list that can be made entirely with cards from the structure deck. So let's get into it. To start us off, we have 3 copies of Legendary Fire King Ponix. This is the best starter in the deck by virtue of giving you access to Fire King Island, but if you already have Fire King Island, the pure deck has a really powerful spell card called Fire King's Skyburn. And Skyburn control is really good. So if you already have access to Sanctuary and or Island, Ponix can grab you Skyburn and you can just blow people out as a quick play spell all the time. Definitely the best card in the deck. Always run 3. Then we have 3 copies of Sacred Fire King Garunix. This is the new biggest, baddest boss monster. He is really good in the pure build that's trying to do Skyburn loops because you can summon him out, pop something on your opponent's turn, Skyburn, pop some stuff, including him. If you have another one in the graveyard, it summons back out. You can pop something again. Like this thing is an engine of destruction, a huge beat stick, and I like to run 3 in the pure version for that reason. Then we have 3 copies of Fire King High Avatar Kieran. This is a custom card. It's also technically a hand trap. I have used it. I did use it to, from hand, pop a Fencing Fire Ferret and interrupt my opponent on their Bahamut Shark today, which was really cool. It's a quick effect to destroy. When it's destroyed, it non-targeting pops something. It also non-targeting summons a Fire King from your graveyard. An absolute all-star. It's probably the second best Fire King behind Ponix. And I would also always run 3, especially in the pure version. We don't need to run Yaksha anymore because of Kieran. Rest in peace, Yaksha. Next, we have 3 copies of Fire King Avatar Arvata. This guy is the main normal summon of the deck. He's the normal summon that you want to keep on the field most often. You want to lead with him if you have access to Ponix through Island already and you just want to protect your plays from Ash Blossom. And his floating effect comes in quite frequently in the grind game where you can just float into a Kieran, make the Xyz, attack for game. Really good card. Always run 3 in the pure version. Next, I have 2 copies of Fire King Avatar Barong. He's a standby phase searcher. When you're running the budget structure deck pure version, you're running a little low on cards to fit in the deck. Normally, I'd probably only run one of this guy because he's so easily accessed by Sacred Fire King Garunix now. But he's a searcher, and it's really nice to have him in loops. He also helps you make rank 4s a little more consistently. Then we have 2 copies of the OG Fire King High Avatar Garunix. I ran 2 to try to get off the old standard loop of double Garunix in the standby phase every turn for the rest of Infinity. And I did not get the loop off, but it was really cool using him from the hand with Kieran on my opponent's turn 1, and then I go to standby phase and they're forced to burn and negate on the Garunix, otherwise it'll come out and wipe the board. Really good, powerful card. I probably would only run 1 going forward, but for the structure deck version of this deck, 2 is definitely a good idea. Next, I'm running 2 copies of Fire King Avatar Rangbali. He's the only Fire King that doesn't have any kind of floating effect whatsoever, but he makes up for it by being a spell and trap negate, which is really powerful because a lot of monster effects have difficulty interacting with the Fire Kings, and the Fire Kings don't have a lot of difficulty interacting with monsters. They just blow them up so easily, and Rangbali can help you beat things like Evenly Matched that the deck might otherwise struggle against. Then I'm running 1 copy of the original Baby Garunix, the Fire King Avatar Garunix. He's mostly here to float into off of Avatar Garunix in a grind game where, Avatar Garunix gets destroyed by battle, can summon the little Garunix, and then the little Garunix can float into something else. He's not essential, and I would probably not run him, but in the structure deck format, he's pretty decent. Next, for the Fire King Spells and Traps, here's the very best one. 3 copies of Fire King Sanctuary. Fire King Sanctuary is just 3 more copies of Island with additional utility. The protection effect is extremely good in this deck. I used the Xyz effect to destroy a spell or trap, and I used it to destroy Island and protect the Sanctuary on 2 separate occasions, and both times it was really powerful, just getting to pop basically any fire that I want from hand or field and then start my loops again. So 3 Sanctuary is absolutely mandatory in the pure version. Then we're running 3 copies of Fire King Island. This is the best starter the deck has after Sanctuary because, Sanctuary is Island. Island can pop a card and then search Ponix or search Garunix into an extension. You want to run max copies of it because Island popping to grab Ponix allows you to special to Ponix, allows you to search for the Skyburn, and this is Skyburn control. So there we go. Speaking of It's the God card! 3 copies of Fire King Skyburn. This card is absolutely devastating. You can use it to dodge Effect Failure and Imperm. You can use it to dodge your own skill drain after sideboard. You can use it to absolutely blow people out. You can use it to restart your destruction loops. This card is insanity. It also can protect your board from destruction, which sometimes you want to do. If your opponent's going to go remove your island with a Cosmic Cyclone, Skyburn can be used to protect what you have up. Absolutely amazing card, especially better as you run more Fire King monsters, which this deck runs quite a few of. Then, because this is a pure build, we are running 3 copies of the Emergency Teleport, running 3 copies of Onslaught of the Fire Kings. It's not the greatest card, but today it really overperformed because there were a lot of boards that I was playing into where the opponent had a 3 material Appaloosa out, or an Abyss Dweller out, and what you can do is Onslaught for the OG Garunix, beat over the Abyss Dweller or Appaloosa, and then it gets destroyed in the end of the turn, and it comes back in the standby phase and wipes the board, which I did do today, and it was super, super potent. So this helps you beat Abyss Dweller indirectly by accessing the original OG guy, and it also helps going second, which the deck otherwise struggles with a little bit. 2 copies of Circle of the Fire Kings. This card is just utility on a stick. It lets you trade out on field effects for graveyard effects. If you've used a negate from Arvada, you can turn it into a Rangbali. If you have a Garunix that's sitting there, you can put it in the graveyard to summon back out Eponyx, get a search, and then the Garunix is now live to bring back and do another pop. Really good utility option, and you almost always want to have one in hand after you've already got a Skyburn and an island access. This is the 3rd most important card to search with Eponyx. Then I was testing out 1 copy of Echelon of the Fire Kings. This is a pretty potent Soul Charge-like trap card. It lets you summon 1 Fire Beast, 1 Fire Beast Warrior, and 1 Fire Winged Beast from your hand, your deck, and your graveyard, 1 from each, which is definitely a difficult piece to master. However, I used it on separate occasions to make a Skyburn pop 3, which was really cool. You know, just set Echelon, set Skyburn, flip Echelon, bring out 3, Skyburn pop 3. It was really clean, and it starts your destruction loops all over again. It's good recycling. But what really came in clutch was a game against Tier Limits where I was almost certainly going to lose if I didn't kill them literally right now this turn. And you can flip Echelon, and their effects are negated, but they can attack. So you can summon out Sacred Fire King Garunix, Kieran, and another body, and attack for like 6,000 off of 1 trap. This thing is really, really powerful. I don't think I would run it in anything but Pure, but in Pure it had some good tech. It's just a little hard to use. Then for the non-Fire King cards, I'm running 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. Check out the ulties. This card is just more copies of Barong, Arvada, and Rangbali. It's definitely the weakest card in the deck, but it's a searcher for your negate that protects your whole line, so I definitely wanted to max out. It also came in handy actually having an extra 100 attack on Arvada so that it was a high enough attack to beat over, you know, even after the Tier Limit Scream reduced his attack. Then we have 1 copy of Fencing Fire Ferret. This guy's really important because in your standard combo that you do with Eponyx, you end up on 2 pops plus a Hang. But sometimes you have a nice way to pop your Kieran without needing to use Garunix on it. So you can use your Garunix to pop a Fire Ferret and get an additional pop, you know, that isn't hard once per turn, basically. So it's also decent in time. You get to burn them. It's cool. Then 1 copy of Blaster, Dragon Ruler of Infernos. Just a nice little tech piece and extension. I did get to use it once to force out a Fenrir, so that was cool. And the final 40th card, Clean 40, is Terraforming because Island is the most important card in the deck because Island gets you Eponyx, and Eponyx gets you Skyburn, and this is Skyburn control. So that's the list, 40 cards, nice and clean. It struggles a small amount going second, but not too bad actually, because you can often normal summon Arvada and then endeavor to get a board wipe going protected by Arvada. So I didn't have too much trouble going second today. Then for the extra deck, I'm running 3 copies of Garunix Eternity, Hyang of the Fire Kings. And that's it. That's all you need. You don't need the rest of these. Today I summoned from the extra deck only 3 times in 5 rounds. And each time it was a Garunix Eternity. I summoned 1 on my opponent's turn, and then in 1 other duel I summoned 1 on my opponent's turn, and then another on my turn. So officially, Skyburn Control is a Pot of Extravagance, Pot of Prosperity deck. It has no trouble. However, if you have the money and the cards lying around, I do recommend getting some extra stuff in your extra deck besides just him, even if you do only need him to beat all the crazy decks in the format like Unchained and Tier Limits. But I do run 1 copy of Superstar Flayer Typhon. Really good option. I actually messed up. I would have had game in one of my games if I had gone for Sky Crisis because it would have prevented Nibiru. I had the bodies on board to go for game. I go end main phase. He says, Nibiru. Crap. All right, I lost. Let's go to game 3. Whereas if I had just made a Sky Crisis on top of a random body, I would have been able to attack, and the Nib wouldn't have been able to activate. So there is an argument here that I should have summoned 4 times from the extra deck today instead of only 3, but it was still fine. I won game 3, so no problem. 1 copy of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Tiger King. He's there as a generic board negation. You can negate everything that's not a Beast Warrior, and he also searches a tanky, so he's really nice to deal with things that can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. 1 copy of IP Masquerena as a nice generic link option to make things like SP Little Knight, which is non-destruction removal. I never needed to make it. Underworld Goddess of the Closed World in case there's something that's just straight up unaffected, like At Arrival Cybers at Ignister, because, you know, this deck can't out it otherwise in the main, so you need something in the extra. 1 copy of Brigade Shureg, the Ominous Omen, because, again, non-destruction removal in the extra deck is mandatory. So we have, you know, non-destruction negation, banishing, the little extra deck kaiju thing, a non-targeting banish, all very important stuff. 1 Amphibious Swarmship Ambler Whale is just a nice link monster to make if I, for some reason, can't get game and have just a ton of bodies lying around. I don't think this card's very good without all the Snake Eye support, but I had to run something. A copy of Firefighting Dromedal. This is kind of funny. It can let you recycle things if you're in a really slow grind state, and it's also Spell and Trap Destruction, which the deck doesn't have a ton of. 1 Heat of the Fire Charmer Ablaze. Literally everybody's running Ash Blossom, and there's lots of fire decks lying around, so you can use this to steal some pretty cool stuff. 1 copy of Dual Little Chimera. The reason I'm running Dual Little Chimera is to allow my big Garunix, my ultimate Garunix, to hit 4,000 attack, which is a really important breakpoint. You can use big Garunix to pop, I guess, medium Garunix and gain 1350 going up to 3050, and then Dual Little Chimera can get you to 4050, so you can beat over some things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. 1 Relinquished Anima. It's non-destruction removal that you can access through Ponix if your opponent plays into it. 1 Selena Great Sunlight Wolf, just to recycle some things, and that is 15 card extra deck, but again, the only things I could have used today are these, you know, just the Grunix Eternities and the Typhon, and then the only things that you really need out of here are some kind of non-destruction removal. You know, non-destruction interaction for your opponent's cards are pretty essential for this deck, just for random situations that come up, and the rest can be kind of whatever you want. So that's it for the extra deck, and again, the only cards I needed today to win all 5 matches were the 3 Hang of the Fire Kings, Grunix Eternity from the structure deck. And I never like to go over sideboarding stuff too in-depth because your sideboarding changes based on what local you play at, but in the sideboard I was running Kurikara Div Incarnate as a kaiju option, Skill Drain for going first because this deck is like Yang Zing, and just everything floats all the time, and you can make some pretty big bodies, so Skill Drain's good. And I did win a match with Barrier Statue of the Inferno against Kashtira because, you know, locking them out of summoning Fenrir or Unicorn is pretty good. These cards I would recommend running even in non-pure versions of the deck. Obviously they're not in the structure deck, but they're very good. I was also running a Volcanic Scattershot, the other Skill Drains, some DD Crows, which are actually very important in the tier matchup and the Unchained matchup. 3 Ash Blossom, it's the only fire hand trap. A Change of Heart, non-destruction removal. Club of the Grave helps deal with other decks that float. And a Fire King Avatar Kirin. This card's important because it can send Barrier Statue of the Inferno to the graveyard if you have Circle of the Fire Kings in your hand, so you can try to turbo that out a little more effectively. That's actually how I accessed it against Kashtira. But again, I don't like to go too in-depth on sideboarding. You know, just make sure you have some non-destruction removal in there. That's really the most important. Just get something in there that can handle monsters that the Fire Kings can. The deck's, again, pretty decent at going second and very good at going first, so I didn't have too much trouble, didn't need the sideboard too much today. I would probably, if I was going to make changes to the deck, which I will be in the future here, next week I'm going to be running it with the Wanted, Sinful Spoils, Diabellstar stuff, and then I'm probably going to run a version that has Tri-Brigades and Volcanics in it. You know, I'm just going to play this deck basically until Nationals this year, so there we go. Fire Kings, $30. $30 you can 5-0 locals. That's all for today. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. Look forward to more Fire King deck profiles in the future. Peace.